Hey, this is Brian again, and I'd like to ask you to do a favor. We can't do this work without people like you, so if you can, please like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends about Bring Back the Porch.
It's hard to beat. Pricing is always a tricky one, right? We know the economy, but like when you've got the artists that you have and the food that their hometowns bring in, we can't go wrong.
This episode of Bring Back the Porch brought to you by Bernie Leahy, River Street Realty. Let's get you home. If it's January, it must be time for Tongue on the Post Music Festival, Folk Music Festival, and joining me now is Rob Pape, the Executive Director and the Artistic Director of the Medicine Folk Music Club.
Yes, sir.
That's a big mouthful.
Right? You should see it on a business card.
Oh, yeah. Probably like this, eh? Welcome, Rob. Glad you could pull up a chair here on the post.
Thanks.
On the porch for the post.
I appreciate it.
Now, 20 years. That's quite a milestone.
It is so. We've been waiting and wondering and wanting for this for a few years now, watching it come, and all of a sudden it's here.
Now, you've survived a lot of things over 20 years, not the least of which was a pandemic.
Yeah, we're actually quite proud of what we managed to pull off in the pandemic. We were one of the few festivals that managed to continue on. We switched pretty quickly to a live stream scenario, and we recorded out of the kilns at Medalta, which was absolutely magical. Was not an easy thing to do. There was definitely a few politicians in this province that wondered how they got personal phone calls on their cell phones, but we managed to get the approval we needed to continue on and make our way through that and keep the music going.
20 years ago, when the idea was first born, how did it come to fruition?
So I wasn't part of the original, the founding members. So, we had Darla Swatsky, Donna Robinson, Betty Aiken, Les Pearson. We're kind of the founders of the festival. We've since lost Les a couple of years ago, but and then there was some other early starters like David Gue and individuals like that. And so they had been, they were avid folk music festival fans. And as a general rule, most folk music festivals are all in the summertime.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty hard to find a weekend to carve out to fit a little niche in. And they realized pretty quickly that, wintertime was a great opportunity to, it's a bit of an open calendar, as well as the fact that it's very much a time where musicians need to get, find an income. It's not a big pay time for them. And so it began in the early days, and they did some shows up at Crescent Heights, and we were at the college for a number of the festivals. And then I think our ninth year, I think we moved over to Medalta, and we've been there ever since. It's home, Yeah.
The name, it's not hard to remember.
Right?
Tongue on the Post. I think of my son putting his tongue on a steel railing when he was young, and it just sticks in the head.
Absolutely. Everybody's kind of got that story, and it's also a little, mind the pun, tongue in cheek in making it happen. And it's definitely a brand that has been well received over the years. Now,
20 years, anything special this year that you've got?
Oh, we've got all kinds of special things this year. It's we're so looking forward to it. This year's going to be the first year that we're going to have a pancake breakfast on Saturday morning down at Medalta. So from 8 to 10, by donation, we're going to have a pancake breakfast outside at Medalta there, as long as the weather's working with us. It's kind of a funny scenario with having a festival in January in Medicine Hat. We've done shows in September, and it's been -5 up at the teepee, but more often than not, generally we can generally find about +10, sometimes up to +15 for a winter folk music festival in January here.
Yeah, because pancake breakfasts, they don't happen in the wintertime either. That's always a stampede thing.
Yeah, so we've the board and everybody racking their brain trying to figure out what we can do new, because we feel that we've got a pretty good hold on what we do, throughout the week, in the sense of, we do a number of free shows throughout the coffee shops here in town, the Cafe Concert Series. And so, we've got Station and Cafe Verve and Zucchini Blossom and Note and Empty Nest, all taking part and free concerts that people are able to come in and check out local artists. And then in the evenings, we've got, various things happening over at Medalta. It was hard to try and find a spot to do something new.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you picked a winner when you got to Medalta with those kilns.
Oh, like I always like to say, like that place has soul. The walls have soul. It's. I remember early on when I started volunteering with the festival, and being at the college and the white walls and everything else, it just felt very institutional. Nothing to take away from the college. They've got a beautiful theater there. The rooms really work for us. But once we moved into Medalta, we knew it was home. It's one and the same.
The acoustics are incredible.
Well, it's kind of a funny room, when you're doing sound and acoustics in a brick room. Our sound guys at Al's Audio have definitely had their work cut out for them over the years, but they always do a phenomenal job of taking care of things, and yeah, we love it.
Yeah, it's great. Let's kind of go through the calendar here and just talk about Monday. You kick things off with the Supper and Song event.
Yeah, so in the past we've gone around town to different restaurants and whatnot. Last year we were up at Blowers in Grafton with the Traveling Mabels, and so this year we wanted to bring as much back to Medalta as we could, and so we're in the big room, the reception gallery, and we've got Hometown Culinary facilitating the catering, which if you've ever eaten there, it's just. It's phenomenal. Those, Adam and Jen just do a phenomenal job. And so we've got John Ward Hannum coming to play that night, and John's a club and a festival favorite. Coming up from Lethbridge, he's a phenomenal career. He's actually at the moment he's the provincial arts ambassador for Alberta.
So he's hi mucky muck.
Yeah, and so he's coming down along with a couple of friends of his, Morans and Fremlin. Mm-hmm. And so they're going to put on a phenomenal night of music, and then John's going to stick around for a couple of days, and he's doing a free singer-songwriter workshop at Medalta Tuesday and Wednesday from 5 till 9. You
said the magic word, free.
Right. Everybody loves free.
And when you can pick somebody's brain like John,
yeah,
that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think he's getting pretty close to being at capacity. I know as of yesterday he had 6 slots left. I think he was taking 24, but I'm pretty sure you can bump it up a little bit if he needs it.
And I think what is, just reading here, $65 gets you in, and also gets you the meal and the entertainment.
Absolutely.
Pretty good night of fun for the 26th, and you're just getting started.
Yep. It's hard to beat. Pricing is always a tricky one, right? We know the economy, but like when you've got the artists that you have and the food that their hometowns bring in, we can't go wrong.
Tuesday, the 27th, the first of 3 nights, the VIP Kiln series, where you're actually going to get into the kilns, but there's not a lot of elbow room there. Well,
the kilns are a magical space, and years ago, we only used the kilns on our Saturday side stage, and the problem with that is we only got about 4, maybe 5 sets out of the kiln before we had to close things down to prepare for our evening gallery, and so a number of years ago, we tried figuring out how we can utilize that more, and out of that came the VIP Kiln series. And so it's a very intimate setting, maximum capacity of 70 people, and it's a show like no other. The musicians absolutely are knocking at the door wanting to play that room, and anybody that comes in to experience a show just walks away just amazed.
And you have Jim Bryson.
Yeah, Jim's going to be a phenomenal show. He's he's been around, phenomenal Canadian singer-songwriter. He's been a side guy with Tragically Hip for a while.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing to have on your resume.
It looks pretty darn good, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And now that is $30 for the show.
Yeah.
But like you say, you're limited.
Yeah.
So I don't know if are they still available?
Yeah, we still got a few seats left.
Okay. Wednesday, the 28th, you've got some local legends. You call them the Prairie Chicks.
Yeah, well, they call themselves that. I just do as I'm told. Ali Celine and Connie Jean are just a phenomenal pair, and it just seems so fitting to bring them back for the 20th. And they'd kind of been in a little bit of a hiatus. Everybody's got things going on in their lives, and Connie lost her partner here a year ago, 2 years ago. So life takes its turns, but they're back pushing, and they're just as amazing as they ever were, and so we can't wait to have them in there.
Okay, and then we go to Thursday where you've got JJ Shiplet.
I don't even. Sometimes I sit and wonder how we even managed to bring JJ in for the Kiln show. The last time JJ was in town, he sold out the Esplanade. And so, yeah.
A few less seats than this one.
Yeah, so JJ's a phenomenal artist, and, that is a show that is going to be an extremely special one.
And that's the third of the three.
That's the third of the three.
Okay, and there's bar available.
Absolutely. Medalta loves running a bar at all the events, and that's all handled and facilitated by Medalta, and so we're happy to partner with them and work with them. They're such a phenomenal place.
All right, Friday night then, we have a local singer-songwriter night starting at 7 p.m.
Yeah, so that's always a big hit. I think it's 400 seat capacity in the reception gallery there at Medalta, and as a general rule, it's a packed house. It's a free evening. We do ask for donations if you can afford it, and all that money goes back into, the artists and whatnot in our community. But by no means any obligation. We just want to have everybody come out and enjoy a night without that barrier. And it's an evening for us to highlight the local singer-songwriters as they're up and coming and making their accomplishments in the community.
Did you want to talk about some of the ones that will be on that night?
Sure.
The local ones?
Sure.
You've got Jason Crooks, Brandon Thomas, Natalie Roberts, Brad Haas, Derek Gavi,
Yep.
Gavi, okay. Joy Bauer.
Yep.
Jack Humany.
Yep.
Kim Kramer.
Yep.
Nettie Mack. Michael Shane, and Roots and Boots.
Roots and Boots is another one with Connie Jean, another one of her little projects with Tim Herman. And so, Tim kind of had his fame for the country band Wichita. And, both phenomenal artists. And so they've been doing some great things together, playing off each other's harmonies and working it out.
And that's on Friday the 30th, starting at 7 in the evening.
You betcha. And, we'll have a 50-50 going that night. And everybody just has a good time. Friday night's a very relaxed, enjoyable evening. And, this year's just the ability to showcase some phenomenal local talent as they're, growing and making their way.
Okay, and then we get to the Saturday Pancake Breakfast, which is 8 until 10.
Yes, sir.
Again, by donation, down at Medalta. And then on the 31st, on the evening of the Saturday, you've got some side stages at 11 in the morning.
Yep. So we've got, there'll be 4 stages running throughout Medalta. It's pretty amazing to think that we can actually put 4 different stages in 4 different rooms in that building and it not really interfere with each other, as well as... Amanda Crawford, our vendor coordinator, has put together a phenomenal assortment of local vendors and artisans, showcasing and selling their wares. So it's we've got some amazing artists lined up that day. Derek Hintz is another local favorite that everybody just loves to come see. Wheels, who's a former Hatter, Jay Bocott, and his partner. We've got Michael Bernard Fitzgerald, just unbelievable. That's going to be quite the show with him. We've got Jenny Allen. We've got Carter Felker, Amy Nelson. I'm sure I'm forgetting some other people.
Cast of thousands.
Right? It's, it's a busy day, and it's an interesting one where it's one of those scenarios. We try and schedule things out so people can kind of cross, and catch both shows, but when you're loving music, it's hard to pick, one of 4. And so, it's... we just fill the day with music. And
then we get to the big event, Saturday night. A man that I saw play in Medicine Hat, I think it was 1985. And he's still going.
Yeah.
Valdy.
Yeah, Valdy's, I think he's 80 now. We can't wait to have Valdy here. And truth be told, Valdy can't wait to be here. Oh. I was speaking to Valdy in October up at Alberta Showcase with the Arts Touring Alliance of Alberta. And he was in, presenting. And once I introduced myself as, Rob, being from Medicine Hat, and as soon as he heard Medicine Hat, his eyes opened wide, and he says, I really want to play that Tongue in the Post Festival. And I said, well, sir, today's your lucky day. And, he's just chomping at the bit. We're so excited to have him back. I mean, Valdy's a legend, and to have Valdy come for our 20th, it just seems so fitting.
Okay, now you have somebody that'll be opening for Valdy as well.
Tara Spencer is an absolute gem. Just a storyteller like no other. Pictou County, Nova Scotia girl. She's a 2025 Music Nova Scotia Artist of the Year, and oddly enough, a former funeral director.
Really? Well, that's 880 degrees.
Right, and to see her, to listen to her, to meet her, you would never know. And she's just the sweetest gal with the most amazing vocals and stories, and we can't wait to have them both in the same room. It's going to be a night.
You have a full week. Now, where do I buy my tickets?
Well, we've got tickets on Eventbrite. Under Tongue in the Post. There's lots of marketing going through our social media on Facebook, and then on our website, topfest.ca and mhfolkmusic.com.
Sounds like you're going to have a busy week, and maybe we'll have you back again in the summertime. You do something with the porch.
Yeah, that's a personal project of mine.
The porch.
Yeah, we the Folk Music Club has always been a supporter, but we. My wife and I started that event. What are we going on? 5 years now, I think.
Oh.
Just wanting to have an opportunity to share our community, share the musicians, and showcase the Southeast Hill. And so, Porch Fest has become a big thing.
Well, the hills are alive.
Yes, sir.
With the sound of music. Rob Pape, thank you for your visit.
Thank you.